want to be in the absolute best financial position that you can be. And over time, you would eventually like to be rich. In this video, I'll be going through the order that you should be making specific financial moves to make sure that you end up in the best financial position of your life. We'll be covering everything from tax efficiency to investing to paying off debt. Hello, my name is Rachel and welcome back to the channel. So let's start very quickly with step one, and that is paying off high interest debt. This is so crucial for building financial stability and for making you a good investor in the long term. Okay, so what counts as high interest debt? I would say that anything with an interest rate of over 8% would arguably be high interest debt. So that's things like credit cards where you have APR of over 20%. This will really be hampering your efforts at financial security and eventually becoming rich. Okay, in terms of mathematics, what makes the most sense is to sit down and write down each and every debt from the highest interest rate down to the lowest. And as I said, we're talking about high interest debt here, so any debt over 8%. So you might start out with, for example, a credit card of around 24%. The next debt might be another credit card with a slightly lower APR of 22.9%. You could also add anything into this list like car loans, which might have an interest rate of between 9 and 20% at the moment. So I would write all of these down and simply start with the one that has the highest interest rate. This is because this is the debt that is costing you the most money. So the reason that I would say pay off debt before you start investing, because generally speaking, you're not going to be making over 20% in the stock market in a year, but you are losing over 20% a year in APR. So it makes much more sense to pay off credit card debt than it does to start investing where you're not going to see returns of over 20% in an average year in the stock market. But what you are going to see is returns of over 20% when you are paying off your credit card debt, because that is money that you are not losing to those credit card providers, and that is money that you are getting back in your wallet. Some people might say, oh, well, shouldn't I start saving? Even with interest rates really high in savings accounts at the moment at over 5%, you're still losing 20% by not having paid off your credit card debt. So making 5% in a high interest savings account is not going to get you anywhere. So I'm urging you to look at paying off credit cards before you start saving or investing. Now, what might be worth doing if you do have a lot of credit card debt, and this is something I have done historically, is to do a 0% balance transfer. So this is simply moving money from one credit card over to another credit card where you are going to get 0% for a specific time period. For example, I've seen ones advertised at the moment for around 22 months. So for 22 months, you're not going to be paying any interest, but I would urge you to actually pay that money off over that time period if you are going to do that, because psychologically it would be really beneficial to get rid of that debt, and otherwise you're simply going to have to get to the end of 22 months or whatever the time period is and move it on to another balance transfer. And actually what you really want to be doing is getting rid of credit card debt. Okay, so once all of your high interest debt is gone, the next step to really building your wealth is to have a small emergency fund. I would put this value at around £500 to £1,000, and this is for absolute emergencies. We'll look later at building a larger emergency pot, but this will stop you going into credit card debt again if something bad does happen and you need, say, between £500 and £1,000 then and there. I would look to build that emergency fund up next. You could look at putting that into a high interest savings account. As I said, there are high interest savings accounts available at the moment at over 5%. I have just opened up a new one. I'm going to check it out in a little bit more detail before I give you any information on it, because I haven't personally used it yet. But there are many high interest savings accounts available at the moment which are easy access, so you can get that money straight away in the case of an emergency. And what that will also do is it will stop you taking money out of investments later down the line if you do have an emergency. Okay, so the next step is our first step into investing, and it might not be what you think. It's actually investing in your pension. So when you have a pension, your pension will be invested, and with workplace pensions there might be the option for matching contributions. So at the moment an employer can contribute a minimum of 3% into your pension. So take some time to look at the different terms and conditions with your employer pension and make sure that you are absolutely making the most out of it. Now, it might not sound very exciting now, but what will be very exciting is being able to retire comfortably when you want to. So if you're watching in America, then this is simply making the most of your 401k. And you might be watching this and thinking, I am actually self-employed here in the UK and think I can't contribute to a pension. That is not the case. You can open up something called a self-invested personal pension, or SIPP for short. I personally do have one of these, and the bulk of the money I have in the self-invested personal pension is money that I have taken from old workplace pensions and moved into a self-invested personal pension. This means that I can take control of the investments that I am making for my financial future, and it also means I have a really good idea of the money that I have in my pension, so I can have a good idea of where I will be when it comes to retirement time. I do have a video with a bit more information on self-invested personal pensions, which I will link here, and I also have a video where I compare different self-invested personal pension providers, so if you want to check that out, then have a look at that here. Now, as I said, these are really good for people who are self-employed, and they are also very, very good if you want to collect old workplace pensions together and then invest them into the stock market yourself. And what is really important to mention with pensions is not only are you securing your financial future, you are also being very tax efficient, and you are getting money back from the government when you invest in your pension, which is very positive and will only build your wealth over time. Okay, so the next step that's really important after you've sorted out your pensions is to build a larger emergency fund. This could be for around 3 months of expenses. Now, the reason I say to do this before you start investing is simply because it's really important to have money on the side to fall back on if you ever need it before you start investing, because when you start investing in the stock market, there are obviously going to be massive highs and peaks, but there are also going to be troughs, and what you don't want to be doing is having an emergency situation and really needing some money, say for example if you've lost your job, and then having to take money out of the stock market when it is not at its high. You want to ideally be investing for 5 years or more and into the future. So if you've got an emergency fund to the side which gives you 3 months of expenses, that means that you're not going to have to pull money out of investments when you simply don't want to, or when the market is not doing particularly well. Now, with this emergency fund, you could obviously again put it into a high interest savings account, as we've already talked about. However, you only get up to £1,000 of a personal savings allowance as a basic rate taxpayer. So if you think that you might be making more than £1,000 from interest in your savings account, then it might be worth looking at something like investing in, for example, premium bonds. So the prize rate fund for premium bonds is currently 4.4%, which is really strong. But what's really important about premium bonds is that they're free of capital gains tax, stamp duty, and income tax. So any money that you're making and winning with premium bonds, you are not having to pay tax on. What I will say with premium bonds though is that it does take a few days to get your money out of premium bonds. So if you have a true emergency, then you won't be able to get that money out straight away. So I personally have a combination of money in high interest savings accounts and in premium bonds for my emergency fund, simply because I might want to access money quite quickly. But I enjoy holding premium bonds with the opportunity to win a prize on a monthly basis without having to play something like the lottery. So this is where things start to get really exciting. The next step is to actually start investing. And if you're going to start investing in the stock market, the best way to do that is in a tax efficient account. So here in the UK, it's best to open up something like a stocks and shares ISA. They're sometimes called an investment ISA, or in the US, they are called a Roth IRA. And in the UK here, you can put up to £20,000 a year into a stocks and shares ISA, and any money that you're making on capital gains, you will not be taxed on, which is amazing. So as I said, you can put up to £20,000 into a stocks and shares ISA a year. And you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know what to invest in. If I put this money into a stocks and shares ISA, I don't even know where to get started with investing. I have so many videos on this channel on exchange traded funds, which are a really simple way of investing. When you buy an exchange traded fund, you are simply buying a basket of different stocks rather than having to go out and pick individual stocks and shares. So for example, you could invest in something like Vanguard's FTSE All World. So the code for that is VWRL. And when you're investing in Vanguard's FTSE All World, you're essentially investing in stocks across the whole world with one single investment. So with Vanguard's FTSE All World at present, you are getting over 3,600 different stocks in that single ETF. So you're not having to go out and buy individual stocks and shares and make quite difficult decisions. You're simply investing in the market as a whole. So that means that you're getting a very diverse portfolio, which lowers the level of risk that you are going to have when you start investing. It also means that you're able to invest at a very low cost. So ETFs do tend to have much lower costs than investing in, say, for example, actively managed funds, which are more expensive to invest in and actually tend to underperform index funds or ETFs. So just to give you a little bit more of an understanding of, say, for example, Vanguard's FTSE All World ETF, you are getting 61% of stocks from the United States, 7.94% from the Eurozone, 6.27% from Japan. I'll put a screenshot on here so you can have a look at this in greater detail. You might be thinking, I want to have an understanding of which stocks I'm investing in. So I'm just going to give you the top 5 stocks that fall into Vanguard's FTSE All World. They're Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, and Alphabet, which is essentially Google. So this is a very simple investment that you can make very easily without having to have a huge understanding of the stock market. The returns for Vanguard's FTSE All World are just over 11% for 5-year annualized returns. So 5-year annualized returns means that you're taking the average performance over the last 5 years. So on average, every year it has returned just over 11%, but that is an average. There'll obviously be peaks and troughs in that market, but as I said earlier in the video, if you're looking to invest, you should be looking at a time horizon of 5 years or more. Now obviously when you start investing, you can make any investment decisions that you want to. I do have a video where I look at different exchange traded funds that you could choose to invest in. I'll link that here for you, which gives you a little bit more detail about different ETFs if that is the route that you want to take when you start investing. And as a beginner, I would say that it's a strong route to take because there are very low fees when investing in ETFs, and they do tend to give you diversity in a portfolio, which is so important with riding out peaks and troughs in the stock market. Okay, so the last step in potentially becoming rich and very financially secure would be to pay off any lower interest debts that you might have. So this might be something like student loans, for example, although they're pretty high interest at the moment, but they are under 8% at present. Or say, for example, paying off your mortgage or paying off your mortgage early. Psychologically, I think paying off your mortgage has huge benefits and can make you feel very safe and financially secure. But I personally would choose to invest in the stock market simply because the returns are higher than the interest rates that we're currently seeing for mortgages. This could obviously change, but as I said, the last and final step would be paying off those lower interest debts, and then you would be financially free at that point. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on taking any of these steps towards financial security and potentially being rich one day. Maybe you've already started your journey into investing. I'd love to hear what you are invested in. It would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. It is completely free, so will not have an impact on your wealth over time. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye bye.